Revenge does not require a weapon. It does not require blood. It does not require the other person to suffer. It only requires that you see something they cannot see, and that you wait for the exact moment when that matters most. You have been waiting. The moment is here.
Before we begin, this is the third story. Here is what came before. A look on a path, hands touching over gathered wood, a full moon and a silence that said everything. Then one word from the chief. Go. The forest. Weeks alone, cold, hungry, learning. A small group found across a stream, cautious and then less cautious. A fire shared, something new beginning. You have been gone long enough for the forest to change you. Long enough for the anger to settle into something quieter and more useful than anger. Long enough to know things that the tribe does not know, that the chief does not know. Things you learned in the dark and the cold and the patient silence of the trees. Autumn is deepening. The animals are moving. The cold is sharpening its edges. And somewhere to the south, in the camp you were sent away from, 23 people are going to be hungry soon. You know something about that. In this story you return. Not with weapons, with something sharper. The news came from the young man in the new group. He had been moving through the forest to the south, further than usual, following the deer tracks that had been thinning near your camp. He came back in the late afternoon with no deer, and something else instead, something he communicated with gestures and sounds and the particular quality of attention he gave to your face as he told it. Sounds from the direction of the old tribe. Voices carrying further than they should. Children. The noise of things being moved, rearranged, the restless sound of a group that is not settled. You sat with this information for a while. You knew that sound. You had grown up inside it. And the specific texture of a group under pressure. The way voices changed when the food was running low and winter was coming, and the hunting had been poor. It was not a sound you could mistake for anything else. The old tribe was struggling. You thought about this carefully and honestly. There was a version of you that felt something at this news that was not quite satisfaction, but was in the same neighborhood. You did not spend long in that neighborhood. It was not useful, and it was not who you wanted to be. What you felt, underneath the first reaction, was something more complicated. These were people you had known your whole life. The old man near the entrance. The children, the women who gathered together in the mornings. The chief had sent you away. The tribe had watched you go. But the tribe was not the chief. And the tribe was also the old man and the children and the women, and they were going to be cold and hungry through no fault of their own. You knew where the hunting ground was. 2 hours southeast, past the rock formations, where the deer gathered in numbers near the river. You had found it alone in your first weeks in the forest. You had hunted it many times since. The old tribe did not know it existed. Knowledge is the oldest form of power. It does not announce itself. It does not make noise. It simply sits inside you, waiting, and when the moment comes, it is worth more than any weapon ever made. You have been carrying this knowledge for weeks. You have been waiting, without quite knowing you were waiting for the moment when it would matter most. The moment was here. That night you sat by the fire for a long time after the others slept. The plan formed itself quietly. You did not force it. You had learned in the forest that forcing things was how you wasted energy, and energy was the currency of survival. You let the plan come at its own pace, turning it over, looking at it from different directions, checking it for the places where it could go wrong. You would go back, not alone. You would take 2 people from the new group, the strongest and the fastest, the ones who had learned to hunt beside you, the ones whose skills you understood and trusted. You would go to the hunting ground first. You would hunt well, more than you needed, enough to carry. Then you would go to the border of the old tribe's territory, and you would wait. You would not announce yourself. You would not send a message ahead. That you would simply appear at the border with food in plain sight and let the tribe see what you were carrying and let them draw their own conclusions. This was not a battle. There would be no confrontation, no speech, no demand for acknowledgement. You were not going back to take anything. You were going back to give something, and the giving would say everything that needed to be said without a single word being spoken. The chief had power because he kept the tribe fed and safe. This was the foundation of it. When that foundation cracked, the power cracked with it. You were not going to crack it by force. You were going to crack it by being better at the thing that mattered most, in front of everyone. The most devastating thing you can do to a person who has power over others is not to attack them. It is to make their power irrelevant, to do the thing they were supposed to do and could not. To stand where they stood and be what they failed to be, without anger, without gloating, simply as a fact. This is harder than fighting. It requires patience and precision and the willingness to wait, but it leaves no wounds that need healing. It leaves only the truth, standing there in plain sight, undeniable. You slept. Tomorrow you would speak to the two you needed. Tomorrow the plan would begin. In the morning you spoke to them before the fire was fully built. The strong one first. He was the one who had improved most as a hunter. His instincts good once the technique was corrected. His patience deep and natural. You told him where you were going and why, as clearly as the shared language between you allowed. He listened with the focused attention he brought to everything. But when you finished, he looked at you for a moment and then nodded. Once. That was enough. The quick one next. Smaller, faster. The one who moved through the forest like water finding its way downhill. She had less hunting skill but more forest knowledge than anyone you had met. A sense of direction that never faltered. An ability to read the ground that had saved a hunt more than once. You told her the same thing. She asked a question. You had enough shared language by now to understand it. She was asking about the chief, whether it was safe. You thought about the answer honestly before you gave it. The chief was dangerous in the way that all chiefs were dangerous, in the way that any person with power and pride was dangerous when that power was threatened. But you were not going there to threaten him directly. You were going there with food, which was a gift, which was a different kind of approach entirely. And you would not be alone. Safe enough, you told her. She looked at you with the quick eyes that missed nothing. Then she stood up. 3 of you, the same number who had gone to the old tribe before, in the story that was now 2 stories ago, when you first returned with meat. The same number, but different people, different knowledge, a different world behind you. You choose who comes with you carefully, not the largest or the loudest, the ones you trust, the ones who will stay steady when the situation becomes uncertain, which it will. Trust is not built quickly, and it is not built easily. But you have had weeks of cold mornings and difficult hunts and shared fires to build it with these 2. It is real. You will need it to be real. The hunting ground was exactly as you had left it. The deer were there, near the river, a larger group than you had seen before. The autumn gathering before winter scattered them. You crouched at the edge of the rock formations, and looked at them across the open ground and felt something settle in you. A rightness, the confirmation that what you remembered was real and not a thing the mind had made larger in memory. You laid out the hunt in gesture and whisper. The strong one left, the wide arc, closing the escape to the west. The quick one to the riverside, cutting off the water. You straight ahead, the point of the approach, the first throw. They moved. You waited. The waiting was different now from the waiting in the early days of the forest. In the beginning, waiting had been an effort, the body wanting to move, the anxiety of inexperience pressing against the stillness required. Now the waiting was simply part of the work, as natural as breathing, the body understanding, without being told that the moment would come and forcing it would only make it later. The moment came. The strong one's arc disturbed the left flank of the herd. They turned right. The quick one's position on the riverbank closed the water. The deer at the front of the herd hesitated, looking for the open direction, and in that hesitation, you threw. The first animal fell. The strong one threw from his side. The second animal fell. The herd scattered into the trees. You stood in the sudden quiet of the cleared ground and looked at what you had done. And the three of you looked at each other with the wordless acknowledgement of people who have done a difficult thing well. 2 large animals, more than the 3 of you needed, more than your small camp needed. The weight of what you were carrying was not just meat. It was the reason for going back. It was the argument you were going to make without speaking a word of it. You prepared the animals carefully. You divided the weight between you. You turned north. You reached the border of the old tribe's territory in the afternoon. You knew the markers. The notched trees, the specific arrangement of stones at the path junction. The signs that said, "This is ours," in the language your whole life had taught you to read. You stopped before them. You set down the meat. You waited. The tribe's scouts would have seen you by now. They always saw people approaching the border. This was their function, the eyes of the group, the early warning. You had been one of them yourself, years ago, before other duties had taken your attention elsewhere. You stood in the open. No attempt to conceal yourself or your companions. You wanted to be seen. You wanted the full weight of what you were carrying to be visible to everyone who looked. The strong one set his load down beside yours and stood easy, relaxed, not threatening. The quick one did the same on the other side. 3 people at a border with more meat than 3 people needed, standing in the open, waiting. The forest was quiet around you. The light was the low amber of late afternoon. The shadows long and deep between the trees. Somewhere a bird called once and was silent. Then movement in the trees ahead. A young warrior, one you recognized, came to the edge of the marked territory and stopped. He looked at you. He looked at what you were carrying. He looked back at you. His expression was the expression of someone doing rapid calculations. You have rehearsed nothing. There is nothing to rehearse. You are simply here with what you have, being what you are. The preparation for this moment was not a speech or a plan. The preparation was every cold morning in the forest, every failed hunt, every small shelter in the rain, every night looking at the stars alone. All of that is standing here with you now. You do not need to explain it. It is visible. They came out slowly. First the young warrior, then 2 others behind him, then more, the tribe assembling at the border, the way it always assembled when something unusual happened. Drawn by the specific quality of attention that unusual things create. Children at the back, held by adults. The old ones near the front, because the old ones always positioned themselves where they could see clearly. You scanned the faces. The old man near the entrance of the shelter, thinner than you remembered. The thinness of not quite enough food over too many weeks. The children, quieter than they should be. The particular quiet of children who have absorbed the anxiety of the adults around them. The women you had known your whole life, their expressions guarded, reading the situation the way experienced people read situations, carefully and without committing to a response before it was necessary. And there, at the edge of the group, half behind the older woman she always stood near. Her. You did not let your eyes stay on her. A glance, enough to see that she was there and that she was watching, and then your attention moved on because this was not the moment for that and you both knew it. Then the chief came. He walked through the gathered tribe the way he always walked through it, the people making space without being asked, the quality of presence that had always been his. He stopped at the border. He looked at you. He looked at what you were carrying. You looked at him. The last time you stood in front of this man, he said one word and your world ended. Now you are standing in front of him again, and the balance between you is different. Not reversed, not destroyed, simply different. He is still the chief. You are still the person he sent away, and between you on the ground is more meat than his tribe has seen in weeks. This is the conversation you are having. It requires no words. Nobody spoke for a long time. This was normal. In your tribe, important things were not rushed. Speech came after understanding, not before it, and understanding took the time it needed. You had always known this. In the forest, it had become something deeper than knowledge. Patience was the first skill the forest taught, and the last one you fully learned. The chief looked at the meat. He looked at the two people beside you, strangers to him, assessing them the way he assessed everything, with the calculating intelligence that had kept this tribe alive through difficult years. He looked at you. You met his eyes without looking away. Not aggressively, simply steadily. The steadiness of someone who has nothing to hide and nothing to prove and nothing to ask forgiveness for. One of the old ones stepped forward. An elder woman, white-haired, the one whose opinion carried the most weight in matters that needed weighing. She looked at the meat. She looked at you. She asked the question you had been waiting for, the short, direct question that this culture used when it wanted the essential truth of a situation without elaboration. Where? You told her. Southeast, 2 hours, past the rock formations, the river bend, deer in numbers, water, shelter from the wind. You told her with hands and words and the pointing of direction, everything you knew about the place, freely, holding nothing back. She nodded. She turned and looked at the chief. The chief looked at the meat, at the elder, at you. Then he turned and walked back toward the shelter. This was acceptance. In this culture, turning away without speaking against was the same as agreement. Everyone present understood this. The whispers that moved through the assembled tribe told you they understood it. He did not thank you. He did not acknowledge what you had done or what it cost him to accept it. This was expected. You did not need the acknowledgement.
The acknowledgement was in the turning away, in the silence that said, "You have done something I could not do, and I have no response to that, and so I will walk away and let the tribe draw its own conclusions. They are drawing them now. You can hear it in the whispers."
They invited you to stay for the evening meal. Not the chief. The elder woman who had the authority to extend invitations that the chief could not easily countermand, without making his position worse than it already was. She extended it simply, a gesture toward the fire, and you accepted simply, a nod, and that was all the ceremony required. The meat was prepared. The fire was built higher than you had seen it in a long time. The good fire of a group that suddenly has enough fuel and enough reason to burn it. The smell of cooking meat spread through the camp, and you watched the children's faces change at the smell. The way children's faces change when hunger is about to be answered. You sat at the edge of the group, not at the center, not near the chief's place. The edge where the returning stranger sits, where someone who is neither fully inside nor fully outside sits and watches and waits to understand where they actually are. Your two companions sat beside you. They were calm and curious, taking in the larger camp with the observant eyes of people who were used to reading new situations quickly. You had told them enough. They understood the shape of what this was. People came to sit near you as the evening went on. Not the chief, not the chief's inner circle, but others, the ones who had watched you go and watched you return and were doing the arithmetic that people do when the balance of things shifts. The young warrior who had first come to the border. The old man who had always been kind to you. Thinner now but the same eyes. Others. Small conversations, the kind that happened in the spaces between other things. You were here. You were alive. You had found food. These were facts that spoke for themselves. A tribe is not one person. A tribe is many people with many different relationships to the person who leads them. The chief's authority is real, but it is not absolute. It rests on the tribe's belief that he is the best available option for keeping them alive. You have just made that belief more complicated, not destroyed it. Complicated it. This is enough for now. Once, across the fire, you caught the chief looking at you. Not a long look. The kind that happens when two people are on opposite sides of the same fire and the eyes find each other in the shifting light. It lasted perhaps 2 seconds. In those 2 seconds, you read something in his face that you had never seen there before. Not anger. Anger you would have recognized, had expected, had prepared for. This was something quieter and more difficult. Something that a man who has built his identity around being the one who knows things feels when he discovers that someone else knows something he does not. It was not quite defeat, and not quite respect, and not quite fear. It was the beginning of understanding that the world had changed shape slightly, and that he would need to adjust to the new shape. You looked back at him steadily. No triumph in your expression, no satisfaction. You had decided before you came back that if this moment happened, you would meet it cleanly, without adding anything to it, without pressing the advantage in a way that would make him have to respond. The advantage was already large enough. Adding to it would only create an enemy where you did not need one. He looked away first. This was not a victory you celebrated. It was simply a fact, like the turning away before, like the elder's nod, like the whispers moving through the tribe. The facts were accumulating. They did not need your help. The strongest position in any conflict is the one where you do not need the other person to acknowledge your strength, where the strength is simply visible to everyone, including them, without being pointed at. The chief knows what happened tonight. The tribe knows. You know. Nobody needs to say it. The saying would make it smaller. Late in the night, when most of the tribe was sleeping, someone came and sat beside you. You were still awake, the fire low, your 2 companions sleeping nearby. You heard the footsteps before you saw who it was. Light, careful, the specific pattern of someone moving without wanting to wake others. You knew before you turned. She sat beside you at the appropriate distance, the same distance as the night of the full moon, the distance that meant nothing and everything. She looked at the fire, rather than at you. Her face was the same stillness it had been when you left. The face of someone who had been holding something in for a long time. Neither of you spoke for a while. The fire crackled. The forest was dark on all sides. The tribe breathed in its sleep around you. Then she spoke. Low, barely above a whisper, the kind of voice that carries only to the person it is meant for. You listened. She was not talking about feelings. This was not that kind of conversation. Not here, not now. She was practical, clear, direct in the way she had always been direct. She talked about the tribe, about the winter coming, about what she had seen in the weeks since you left. The slow thinning of the stores, the chief's increasing difficulty, the way the tribe's confidence in him had shifted, in ways that were subtle but visible to someone paying attention. She was paying attention. She always had been. And then she said something else, something that was not about the tribe. There are people who know their own minds completely and have known them for a long time and simply wait for the right moment to say what they know. She is one of those people. You understood this, watching her from across the camp in all the weeks before the chief sent you away. You understand it more fully now, sitting beside her in the dark with the fire between you and the sleeping tribe all around. Listening to her say the things she has known for much longer than tonight. Before the first light, she stood to go back. You both understood that she needed to be in her place before the tribe woke. This was practical, not cowardly. The situation required care, and care required timing, and the timing was not yet right for anything more visible than this. She stood. She looked down at you. You looked up at her. She said, "Tomorrow," or the word in your shared language that meant the same as tomorrow, the next morning, the time that was coming. You understood what she meant. Not what would happen tomorrow specifically. What was beginning. What had been building since a look on a narrow path and a moon over a cold clearing and all the weeks of forest and fire and the slow, patient accumulations of the things that matter. Tomorrow, you said. She went, quietly, carefully, back to her place in the sleeping tribe. You watched her go, and then you looked at the fire and let the night finish itself around you. Your two companions were still sleeping. The tribe was still sleeping. The chief was still sleeping, in his place nearest the fire, in the position of a man who had not yet understood the full shape of what tonight had been. You sat with the low fire and the dark forest and the word she had left with you. Tomorrow. You came back with meat and knowledge and the patience of someone who has spent weeks learning what silence teaches. You did not come back for the chief. You did not come back for the tribe. You came back because the forest gave you something and the moment had arrived to use it, and because somewhere in the camp that sent you away was a woman who had been paying attention to the same things you had been paying attention to, for longer than either of you had said. The night ended. The light began. Tomorrow was becoming today. In the earliest light before the tribe fully woke, she came again, this time with a small bundle. The kind of bundle a person carries when they are not coming back. You saw her from across the camp and you understood immediately. The bundle, the way she moved, purposeful and quiet, the movements of someone who has made a decision and is past the point of reconsidering it. She had said tomorrow, and tomorrow had come, and she was here. You stood. Your two companions were awake, sensing the shift in the morning before they fully understood it. You gathered your things. Simple, quick, the practiced efficiency of people who had learned to move when moving was required. From the shelter entrance, the chief appeared. He had heard something, or sensed something. The instinct of a man who had kept this tribe alive by never sleeping too deeply. He stood in the entrance and looked at her and then at you and then at her bundle. He said something, short and hard, directed at her. She turned to him. She answered, slow, clear, not unkind, but not soft either. The voice of someone saying a true thing and not apologizing for it. He said nothing after that. She turned back to you and walked to where you stood, and the group of you, 5 now, turned toward the trees. You did not look back at the chief. There was nothing more to see there. You had seen it already. In the 2 seconds across the fire, in the turning away, in the silence of a man who had run out of moves. The forest opened in front of you. The same forest that had taught you everything, the same trees, the same light finding its way through the canopy, the same smell of cold air and turned earth. You walked into it. Revenge is not a feeling. It is a moment when the truth becomes visible to everyone at the same time. You did not destroy the chief. You did not need to. You simply did the thing he could not do, in front of everyone, without anger, without cruelty, with only the patience and knowledge the forest had given you. And then you walked away, and she walked beside you, and the tribe watched you go the way it had watched you leave before, except that this time the watching was different. This time you were not the one being diminished by the leaving. The trees closed behind you. Ahead, the forest you knew. Beside you, the people you had chosen and the person who had chosen you. A note on history. Leadership in early human groups was not permanent or fixed. Archaeological and anthropological evidence suggests that authority in small hunter-gatherer bands was fluid, dependent on demonstrated competence rather than inherited position. A leader who failed to provide for the group would gradually lose influence, not through formal process, but through the slow shift of the group's trust and attention towards someone more capable. The transfer of knowledge between groups, as depicted in this story,
was a significant driver of early human development. Groups that were willing to share and receive knowledge had survival advantages over those that were not. The movement of individuals between groups carried knowledge with them, and this movement appears to have been far more common than was once believed. The choice made by the woman in this story
reflects something documented across many early human societies: alignment with competence and provision over inherited or claimed authority. In conditions of genuine survival pressure, the calculation is often clear. This series continues. The group that walks into the forest at the end of this story will become something. What it becomes is the next story. Good night.